Hey everyone, it's Apex, and I'm going to be showing you the BIS gearing setup for Season 6 for PvP DKs, and I'll show you some alternatives for higher damage, as well as this setup, which I think is more of the better one, and it does have high resilience. So you will be doing 5-set Furious, and you don't want to break the 4-set in any circumstance. The only thing you could maybe swap would be the helmet for the War Helm of the Champion, but that is hit on it, and I will go into that a little later. So first off, we'll be getting the Frigid Strength of Hodir. This is off Hodir hard mode, and unfortunately it has armor pin, but other than that, it's great. It does have strength, as the necklace as well as your cape in PvP do not have your main stat, and as a DK you actually get up to a 29% boost from having strength. You get the 4% from the talent, you get the 15% from your weapon proc, and then you're typically playing with paladins, so you have kings for another 10%. So not having your main stat on a piece is huge. Now Resil is very good, and that still makes the neck and cape viable alternatives. So if you don't want to get this or you can't get it, then the PvP hit one will be great and probably your next best alternative. But otherwise, you could still go with something like this. It does have haste, which isn't your best stat, but does have a socket, 239, and your main stat. So not horrible, definitely a good option. And then this one's just from badges. This one's definitely not bad, and it's got everything you really want on it besides a socket and Resil and a higher eye level. So really, I would go between this one, this one, this one, and then your Resil one. But really, this one and the Resil, I would say, are your BIS. I'll go to the cape. This one is your best. You really don't want to miss out on this. I'd say out of all the gear on this whole sheet, this one as well as one of the rings will be your most chased items for this season. But besides this cape, you do have this Drape of Icy Intent, which isn't awful, but it does have agility. Then you have Drape of the Skyborn, which is just a worse Drape of the Skyborn. So this one's very good as well, but of course Drape of the Skyborn is just purely better, as it's a 252. And then a lot of these other ones have armor pin or agility, and you're just not interested in that. So really, getting this cape or Drape of the Skyherald are going to be your BIS, and then your third best is going to be your PvP one. These ones have your main stat, a socket, crit hit. They're perfect. Really go for these. And of course, Furious Chest. And the bracers, we're just doing Furious. It's got Resil, your main stat. It is only a 232 though, but I will show you some other options later. And then I don't really like going for the Resil weapon for most melee, because you end up losing your main stat, plus typically you end up losing like armor pen or some other nice stat you want for damage, especially warriors. But in DK's situation, you can't swap to a one-hander shield, and of course they benefit a lot from the Resil, and it does have a 3.6 speed, making it quite good, and the double socket. You could still go for some of these others, and I think it would even be good to have two. I mean, your BIS setup for a DK would actually be to have this mace along with like Voldrithar. And also keep in mind, when you are playing whatever race you are, if you're a human, you want to go with the mace or the sword, and if you're like a orc, then you'd want to go with the axe, because you get the racial with the expertise. Besides that, if you want more damage, Voldrithar is basically your best option. That and Aesir's Edge are basically the same. 3.6 speed, armor pin, double socket, crit. But of course, Voldrithar is slightly higher eye level. And then Hammer of Crushing Whispers is very good. You'd rather have the hit over the armor pin, but because of the lack of gearing options available that do have strength, you really don't have the best gearing setup with this piece in particular, because you really want to have the hit on almost all your other pieces, because they come on such strong pieces. But this is still very good. So I would say the PvP weapons basically best, then Voldrithar, then Aesir's Edge, and Hammer of Crushing Whispers are about equal. And besides that, they'll go to the right side, Furious Gloves, and then for your belt. Belt of Colossal Rage is amazing off of Iron Council hard mode. If you go with this belt and then the Furious Helmet, you will be getting 5 sockets with your belt buckle. But if you swap this with Furious and then you went with the War Helm of the Champion, you would get 1 less socket with just 4 total. But that still is a very good option. War Helm of the Champion plus Furious Belt instead is a 232 and a 252. But if you go with this setup, you're getting a 238 and a 252. So you're getting 6 higher eye levels and an extra socket. So this is a better setup overall, even though some of the hit ends up being wasted, but not really, because some classes specs, they have their own racials and whatnot. That means your extra hit isn't always worthless. Besides that, Furious Pants and then Furious Boots. And then this ring is amazing. This and the cape are the best pieces to go for. If you only can raid a little bit and like, or you only have enough gold to do a GDKP or whatever, go for these two. Or maybe you have like a priority list in a guild. Get these first. Now the ring, we'll just get the Furious one. The Resil's nice, and there really aren't a ton of good ring options. I mean, the next best one I'd say is this 232, which does have your main stat and has expertise, and it might be good to have in case, you know, you're queuing into a lot of plate, like let's say a Warrior H-Pal, which are all over the place. So that's not bad to have in general, but basically that and Sif's Promise, I think, are like your best second alternative, and they're a distant second. Like, this is such a strong ring. And then this one's not very good. Hit expertise, we don't need hit, and then hit haste. We'd rather have crit than haste, and we don't need the hit. So There really aren't a ton of other options. You have this crit hit one, don't need the hit, and then these other ones have things like agility on them. So not a ton of options there. Darkman Car Greatness is great, very cheap, use that. And if your trinkets, I like to have this one because it'll snapshot your gargoyle. So you use this, then your gargoyle, lots of damage. And of course the passive resil is very nice. It does put you up to 1100 with the setup. And this is without blacksmithing, which would add another, 3240 resil. I like to run this, but you could do Comet's Trail or Dark Matter. I think those are the next best alternatives, or maybe even better. Definitely more damage, of course. I think Dark Matter would be better, but Comet's Trail could be decent as well as DK, unlike a lot of the other specs that would use it. Really just enhance, and maybe a handful of others might like that in PvP. And then this sigil is amazing. You'll be using this pretty much for all of Wrath. This one gives you just tons of damage on Death Coil. The Frost Strike thing obviously doesn't matter unless you're playing Frost. Huge damage on Death Coil, that's your big damage dump, so you will want that there. And besides this, if you want to do a higher damage setup, or you're queuing into things where you just don't need as much resil or they're going on your partners, then you could swap out these boots and get the Sabatons of Lifeless Knight. You get one extra socket, and you're trading resil for haste, so you get a little more damage with the rune regeneration. And of course, you're just getting more raw stats. So that is going to be your DPS option, but I wouldn't do that in general because you need the resil being a DK. And then for your bracers, Armbands of Bedlam. These drop off Mimron hard mode, I believe, yes. And you'll get a socket with this, 20 more eye levels. Once again, trading resilience for haste. This is a very good alternative, but Furious is easy to get and arguably better just because we don't really need the haste a ton. And also you do get 135 spell pin. I forgot to mention that with this setup. So you're good to go. You never have to worry about things getting resisted unless it's like a mage with a Pally and Shadow Resist or something. And that is my BIS gearing setup for DKs in Season 6. Let me know what class you'd like to see next, and I'll see you in my next video.